our question to you is, and to all our leaders of this panel, the question is, all of you are A-list data-driven CFOs. So an obvious question to ask A-list data-driven CFOs is, if not this career, which other career would you have totally ruled if not being a CFO? What was your other career choice? We'll start with Mr. Yash Arora.
I think I would have been an IT site.
Fantastic, fantastic. Next leader is Mr. Raghupati Mishra, the CFO, Liberty House Group. Mr. Mishra, same question.
I would have been a politician.
You would have from CFO to politician. Wow, this is a politician. Never say never. Maybe in a couple of years.
Yeah, the situation is pregnant with all kind of possibilities.
Mr. Mishra, most definitely you will have my vote. I am declaring publicly. Fantastic. Our next leader is Mr. Ashish Goenka, the CFO, Jubilant Food Works Limited. Mr. Goenka, what would be your alternate career path?
Nikita, probably I would have been a painter or a poet.
From politicians to painters, wow! I love the variety that this panel has to provide. Fantastic! Wow! Okay, I'm super excited for our next leader. What trajectory will we go to next? We have Mr. Amit Gupta, the CFO, P&G Healthcare. Mr. Gupta.
I guess music or sports, that could have been the choices, which could be more exciting than looking at data sets.
I like how the alternate career path is extreme hardcore creativity as well, like hardcore data. Just like that, we've got hardcore creativity. Fantastic answer, Mr. Amit Gupta. We've got Mr. Atul Joshi, the Chief Technical Architect, IBM India, South Asia. Mr. Joshi, sir, what would be the alternate career path?
Actually, in my college days and school days as well, I used to write some short stories. So probably I would have explored that path as an alternative.
Wow! So I think we can absolutely declare this set to be data-driven CFOs and artists in making. Fantastic answer, gentlemen. Stage is all yours. Thank you so very much.
Good afternoon and very warm welcome to everyone at CFO Leadership Summit. The theme of the discussion today is becoming a data-driven CFO. I'm joined by an exciting and learned panel of guests. They will be sharing their journey about digitalization of finance function. At times, I wonder, is it digitalization era or to be called as an era of disruption? As we have seen, businesses are disappearing overnight. Today, the mantra is, if you are not disrupting others, then it's just a matter of time. Someone else will disrupt you. So it is critical for the businesses to take informed decisions backed up by data rather than feel. CFOs are seen as digital enablers. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Let me start the question with Ashish. The role of CFOs are changing and it's changing dramatically in the dynamic business environment. COVID-19 pandemic has further pushed building up of digital infrastructure. During lockdown period, sale of your company's the key product, Domino's Pizzas, got impacted initially, but later it went up significantly. As a modern CFO, how are you preparing your organization to digitalization? Yeah,
thanks for the question. I think COVID has been a black swan event, an event like no other event. And the speed with which consumers have adopted digitization has actually compressed the digitization adoption curve further and has completely changed the time scales for digitization. We in Jubilant Foods, of course, we got impacted and then we recovered fairly fast and thanks to our customer. But we are looking at pivoting to a food tech company and adopting a digital first strategy. So what we have done, and I'll just maybe talk about a few things that we have done. First and foremost, we have set up a separate analytics and insight function right at the leadership level with a team of experts and data scientists. They cut across departments and business lines and ensure a unified approach to data handling. Also within finance, we have created a center of excellence, which looks at data analytics and caters to the various business needs and the needs of the stakeholders. Not only that, to drive organizational level advocacy on digitization, we've created a digital council, where all CXOs are present and they meet every Friday to go through the journey of digitization in the company. I think with a host of these measures, we hope to become a digital native as a company.
Thanks, Ashish. I think very concerted efforts are being made to digitize the company. And if you look at it, let me go to Amit now. So the pandemic period had been a boon period for the pharma industry, and you're going to cherish this period for a long period of time. What are your experiences on this journey? Amit.
Yeah, so Yash, thanks for the question. When we look back, to the period of COVID, again, this is an unprecedented times that everybody has seen. And, we have seen a lot of trends actually picking up pace in a much faster manner than they would have been in the normal course of the business. I guess the realization with respect to, managing your health, preventive healthcare has actually risen dramatically during this period. If you look at the space, while historically, we have seen that the chronic segments are the ones which actually lead the growth, from a standpoint of addressing the specific challenges of the patients. But in the COVID scenario, we have seen a huge, pickup with respect to people identifying the need for self-care and the utilization of preventive therapies, especially in the VMS space, which helps to better life. We couple of years back we had a big agenda of actually V100. We call that the campaign as V100, where we actually promoted good healthcare practices and how our portfolio can actually help people live 100 years in a very good manner. So I think this piece, which probably 3 years before we were trying to develop, saw a spontaneous acceptance in a wider manner across the age groups, geographies, where people realize the importance of self-care and good health. And these are the trends which I'm sure are not going to die down soon. The impact of the portfolios with respect to the VMS segments, the energy segments, people have realized the potential benefit of these particular portfolio, which is going to stick for a longer period of time. So when we look at the pharma care segment and specifically the segment on the self-care piece, this is the perspective that I can share based on what we have seen in the past.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. Go to Prabhuti now. Prabhuti, share your experience or data journey in your organization, which is into steel and energy business, in terms of providing insights and analysis to support key business decisions, proactively lead strategic initiatives, creating efficient and effective finance functions, how these initiatives are contributing towards economic goals. Further, how are you assuring data accuracy? Yeah, Prabhuti.
Thank you, Yash. What we have done, I'm coming to that one bit. First, let me put the perspective in place. If you see how to use data to get the optimum benefit out of it, if you see the process, you have to collect relevant data, structure the data. Like data comes from all kind of sources and all. So first get the data, collect it, then structure the data. Then you have to put it in particular storage where it is the security part of it comes and the accessibility part of it comes into the fore. Right. Then you have to use the data, means you have to make analysis out of the data so that it is transformed into relevant information on the basis of which the management is taking a decision. Right. So, and then is the finally the management act on those data. That's a management decision making is done. This is the relevant process as far as how to use the data in a commercial organization Right. What we have done is that we have first done a basic awareness program kind of thing that as a this data storage, data collection, storage, and analysis and decision making part of the thing, we have put in place a process. That's number one. Second, two is has made people aware, because the awareness is there, because most of the time what happens is that it's becomes the baby of the finance department kind of, right? So what we have done is that to involve all functions, and the IT reports to financier, so CIO reports to CFO. So any such way we drive it. So where it is not, also CFO has a pivotal role to play there also, but here it is with me only. So we have involved all HODs, all function heads, and the awareness, different program and in the organization has been had, so that there is awareness among all employees that data is a very relevant subject, and kind of how this is a very important thing apart from what they are doing. So people are busy with their work, so talking about data and all becomes alien to them. So that the people need to be involved. So that we have done that. And mostly kind of thing is that periodically we are having this awareness program, and also we are reviewing where this is leading to. Kind of not every month, but once in 2 months kind of thing, we are reviewing how this is how we are managing.
Okay. Thanks, Rupati. I think the data journey, I think it's a more of a team function in your organization. And that's a point. What happened in your experience, Atul, while dealing with your clients?
Yeah, so a couple of examples I would like to give here. While we are having the conversation with our clients in terms of, you talked about how do you actually achieve those economic goals.
Yes.
And those could be across many functions. So one of the example that I have is this client was looking at reducing the packaging cost. Essentially there wasn't much of a packaging cost, because it was more from the plastic wrapper that goes around the drinking bottles and those sort of products. So what we did was we helped the client with our elite data scientist team to actually identify all those factors which are contributing to the optimized cost, right? So if you look at the data science projects today, either there could be a prediction, forecasting, or you could also have a scenario where you have a problem of choice. So this was actually a problem of choice. What is the best optimum use of those resources? And in terms of the modeling, it may lead to a very complex mathematical model. And fortunately, these days we have a lot of tools and capabilities to address that. So they were actually quite surprised that they were able to save a lot of wastages around the packaging cost, which was available to them. So that was one area. The other area was around how do you actually leverage all those digital assets you have, your attachment in the email or invoices, which are again sort of scanned and put as a repository, and then do a meaningful analysis as to what are the procurement patterns. Are you buying those goods or raw materials at the right prices? Sort of compare that across the vendor. So more of a spend analytics, vendor analytics. That is the kind of use cases that we have had. So I would say probably these are a couple of examples that we work with our client.
Thanks, Atul. I think taking a clue from your question, I'm just putting a question to all the panelists. To what extent data analytics and artificial intelligence are used while taking informed decisions? So yeah, I started with Ashish.
Thanks, Yash. I think the data analytics and become all pervasive now in the organization. I think every decision making is getting influenced with the way you look at data and the way you look at analytics. So as I said, in Jubilant FoodWorks, we are looking at adopting a digital first philosophy, and we are building, a lot of data workflow around that to collect and as Raghupati said, to collect, enrich the data and extract insights that support decision making. And I think it's become almost an integral part of our decision making process. We are leveraging our digital assets. We have our own app and we have multiple other brands, and we get a lot of consumer data. So at one level, we are using the data that is coming out of our digital assets for a deep understanding of our consumer behavior. And we're using artificial intelligence and machine-based learning, powerful models, to get a revenue forecast right, to get our consumer cohorts right, to get our consumer preference studied in a lot of detail, so that, and also we're able to do menu customization from them. So when you get on our app, AI-powered engine actually throws up the pizzas that you had ordered in the past, and it helps you then place your orders much faster. Not only that, we are using a lot of big data and analytics to, do a lot of targeted promotions, do a lot of targeted discounts based on your purchase history. We are able to classify customers into high, medium, low usage bucket. And in case you are a high frequency user and you've not been placing an order for say the last 1 week, you will get a targeted promotion landing into your SMS or a message to you. So not only that, I think also on the cost side, we have been using a lot of advanced analytics based or AI based predictive models. Just to give you an example, a very important aspect of our business is delivery. And we deploy close to 30,000 people in our stores across the country. And any demand or supply mismatch where you have demand, but you don't have a delivery person, or if you have a delivery person, but you do not have demand, can lead to either revenue loss or cost escalation. So we have moved now to a manpower planning model and a rostering model, which is completely based on, AI-enabled predictive tool. And this has really helped us improve our manpower availability and reduce cost on one side and protect revenue on the other side. So these were some of the examples of, areas where we are using AI. But as I said, it's all pervasive in the organization.
Okay, thanks. What has been your experience, Raghupati? Yeah, Raghupati?
Yeah, hi, Yash. What is the question? Just
The question is, to what extent data analytics and artificial intelligence are used for informed decision making?
See, this is as far as artificial intelligence is concerned, in India, it's at a nascent stage. We have not started using it till now. But data analytics is quite happening everywhere. Without that, nowadays it's very difficult to get up to date with the market and all what you want to do. So we have people who are experts in data analytics in our team who are doing all kind of churning of the data, and after the data churning, transforming them into relevant information which is suitable to make decision making. That we have quite a few people with us doing that.
Yeah, Amit?
Yeah, I guess in the current age, when we are looking at a scenario where digitization and data analytics is all pervasive across functions and operations, it's hard to, really look at a scenario where you are actually taking decision or managing operations without analytics and digitizations. If we look at the length and breadth of our operations, right from supply chain to manufacturing to customer acquisition to HCP interactions, we are having digitization and analytics going all over the place, with respect to really passing on the key messages, identifying the key messages which are tailored to a specific HCP on the ground, for a certain formulation or a therapy area, to identifying the right stores and, managing our visibility drives across them. All this is right now driven through analytics, which is generated, through a huge amount of data supported by the digitization of the operation. So, in fact, if you look at the context in which we are operating, I think if you go back a century, at the turn of the last century, people would have been talking about electrification as one of the key levers. But today, that we are through with electrification concept, and now digitization is the concept that needs to be embraced by all the organizations. Not for succeeding, but for sustaining themselves in the current world. So, without going into the specific examples of where exactly we apply it, I would say it is all pervasive across the length and breadth of the operations and functions that we have. And we all of our decisions are based on the analytics, which is generated through data mining and data analysis. So, that's what I could share with respect to our organization.
Thank you, Amit. Yeah, Atul, what's your experience?
Yeah, I think, these days, if you look at, how we consume media today, right? So if you have any question, you go to YouTube and you go Google, you have all the answers. So the problem is really about choice. And the same happens with the data as well. Gone are the days when you are, just taking your own data, right? Transactional data, customer data, and so on and so forth. These days, everybody is talking about how do you actually leverage that external data, those patterns arising out of it, and, really making a sense out of it. And that has given rise to, some of the great innovation that are happening in the technology space, whether it is about natural language processing, or, you must have heard about some of those GPT models as well, right? Which really can just, even create codes for you. And so the problem, I think, today is how do you actually, and what you want to do with the data. The data is, not just structured data, your unstructured data, your external data. And the other thing is, while all the tools and technologies exist, do you have the skills, right? These days, if you go data scientist, you will hire a data scientist and he will leave in 6 months, because there are so many, opportunities knocking his door. So it becomes all the relevant that you probably equip your own domain expertise without the need to really have a programming or those complex set of skills. Make him understand the problem in detail and use the tools and technologies where he himself sort of starts creating those models, and take that as a decision support system backend. So that's what we have seen, also not just IBM, but a lot of companies following this pattern, that the AI, machine learning, predictive optimization, all these elements are being seeded in the products. And that's where you take the user experience to the next level. That's my bit on this.
Good to know. I think data analytics is used extensively across industry. I think artificial intelligence, I think that's yet to start with. Some of the companies, corporates, they have started using it. And taking the questions again to Atul, see in terms of the cost, the actual data required for the informed decision making is far less. For example, say, what are the data we collate? Actually, 20 to 30% of the data is collated, analyzed by finance and the business teams. How are you keeping a trade-off between data storage cost vis-a-vis collecting more and more data for the informed decision making?
Correct. So this is again an important observation that we have seen, and probably I would say storage cost is just one element of it. If you talk about, let's say, in our personal experience today, probably I'm getting a notification that my Google Drive is almost full, and they're asking for me to go for a next upgrade. So it's not just your personal data, but the organizational data itself is exploding. So obviously you need some sort of flexibility in that. Most of the organizations are adopting to cloud offering. There has been earlier consideration of the data privacy, data security, when the data actually resides out of your boundaries. But again, as I said, a lot of innovation coming in that place as well. And see, the other aspect is also the usability of the data, right? So there is a cost associated with just managing the data and using the data in the right at the right time, with the right quantity and with the right relevance, that you can make out of it. So, a lot of innovative models are available these days in terms of consuming that data, pay per hour, pay per minute, pay per request of your APIs, and stuff like that. And this is quite evident not just in the traditional industries, but a lot of startups who don't really have a massive amount of investment. They are leveraging these technologies to really invest in the data architecture and productizing that. And we have seen that trend happening even in the industries. So the industries earlier, they used to worry about what should I do with that data? Should I do it only for my own analytics? And we have seen that, the traditional industries are also, investing in making data as a product, and, putting a structure to that and starting offering that as an APIs, or a lot of investment coming in the technology area from the traditional industries as well. So that's an interesting aspect about it. So it really finally boils down to are you looking at these patterns as a cost to your company or minimizing the cost, or probably looking at it in terms of consuming that and probably packaging that and adding that as a support revenue or a new revenue stream, or a stream that massively transforms your cost optimization.
Yeah, good to know the various tools have been used by the industry to optimize the cost. Let me go back to the experts, Rupati, on the in terms of the enterprise, which is increasingly becoming a top priority for CFOs and the finance teams. Some of the biggest threats for a digitally accomplished company is data privacy, cyber attacks, and the cyber frauds. Historically, these have been of CIO's domain, but of late, CFOs are taking shots. What are your views on CFOs partnering with CIOs to monitor and mitigate these risks?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, actually, as I told you earlier, the CIO report to the CFO here in our organization. So any such way, it is the CFO's responsibility here. So it is partnering any such way with that. Otherwise, also CFOs are any such way are superheroes in nowadays. So anything is there, CFO has to partner it. So that we all facing, all are facing that. How it is. But here, what we have done in our organization is that this is a very critical kind of. In our line of thinking, this is a very critical task that is there. We have a enterprise risk management policy, which we all know how we manage that identification and quantification, assessment, and then neutralization and management of the risk is there. So that we have got that. So there are four kind of things that we could do in this. First is that you have to promote a culture. So how you are managing a culture of enterprise risk management in the organization. That's the first thing. And being a CFO, you have enough leeway in the organization to drive it. So that kind of the leveraging of the CFO's position works here. That a culture is inbuilt in the organization. That's a CFO could do on this. Then a kind of two things that has to be there, because without these two, everything is a wish. First, responsibility and accountability to be fixed on persons who are doing what. So this also we have done in our organization. And this CFO has to ensure this, whether it is CIO or other persons or department wise or whatever it is. The fixing of accountability and responsibility is a must. I am telling at the risk of being repetitive, but this is quite important for enterprise risk management. Then you need to periodically kind of oversee the actual implementation, how it is going. Kind of now there are quite a few experts are there who you pay them so that they could find loopholes in your system kind of. So that kind of periodic audit or check or whatever, you can do that. So that also we are doing. And the third is kind of if anything happens, then the criticality, the incident report, and how you are reacting to all those is the most important thing. So this is as of now, it is the practical side of it has not yet come because we are yet to find any breach and all kind of thing. So, but there are mechanism in place, but practically it has not yet implemented how to go about this and this thing. But your cyber security, the process, the policies has to be in place. So these are the four main areas that for enterprise risk management you need to do in terms of.
Glad to know, Raghupati, that risk mitigation is a culture in your organizations. I think that's all for you. And anything you would like to add, Atul, on this, being industry expert?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good point Raghupati has brought in terms of driving that culture. And, historically, there has been a hindrance sort of thing in terms of the kind of investment that goes into, having a matured risk analytics framework in the organization. And a new trend that we have seen is there is a concept of, 3 lines of defense in governance, risk, compliance, or GRC, as we call it. The first line is obviously the top management, who are really the team responsible for ensuring the framework is there. The second line is the risk professional, let's say the chief compliance officer, and maybe sometimes it's also along with the CFO as a responsibility. And then the third line, actually, there is no clear definition. It could be somebody who is front-ending. So potentially it could be any operational team members across any organization. And we've seen, with the technology advancement these days, people are actually looking at a possibility where anybody who sees any aberration in a process, or it need not be just cyber risk or something that happens externally. If there is a weakness in your current process, you want to report it off. You want to report it off anonymously. It should be done. And there are tools and frameworks available where these issues or these incidences, these reports should be, can be raised by anybody in the team. Now, they may not be risk professional, right? So he will just write simple English and say, this is what I have observed. Now, with natural language processing, we can actually map that with the library of controls, which are again, mapped to the risk. And this can reach to your risk professional team, who can further classify that and, help the team understand the financial risk computation of that. And then, at an organization level, it's a kind of collaborative, truly speaking, a GRC framework that you are looking at. So that's a very interesting pattern. Earlier, we had seen, GRC or risk management, enterprise risk management, only being adopted by a very few, especially in BFSI. But these days, we have seen a lot of, interesting conversation happening across the industries, especially on the internal audit point of view. So they really want to sort of drive this PAN organization.
Thanks, Atul. Let me have a quick and a short answers from all the panelists. What has been, according to you, the biggest catalyst for digital transformation in finance function, presently and in future? What are your thoughts? Ashish?
So as they say, Yash, you don't have to choose digital. It's been chosen for you. I think, you have to digitize to stay relevant. It's no longer a choice, and finance is not an exception anymore. So I think finance and organizations must adopt technology and digitize to stay on the curve and with the customers and the business. So I think it's an absolute imperative now, and it's no longer a choice.
Yeah, Amit.
Yeah, I would actually agree with the fellow panelist on the fact that digitization is analytics is something which is now not an option for an organization but a must for keeping them contemporary with respect to the evolving atmosphere that we have around us. So I guess the need for adopting digitization in a meaningful manner, and I really picked that up. The need for really reading the data sets in a relevant manner is going to be a key skill set, because the humongous amount of data that is getting generated today can actually be very misleading and painful from a standpoint of handling it. So I believe now the challenges that the teams will have going forward is to really pinpoint the meaningful digitization and analytics that needs to be put in place, because you could have n number of analytics tools and everything running, but nothing leading to a concrete or actionable conclusion. So, I think that we are getting into an age or an era where people with right skill sets to pinpoint the need for the right set of analytics and getting it to the table are going to be very, very critical in this kind of a scenario.
Yeah, Draupadi?
Yeah, I think I fully agree with Amit and Atul before me. So basically, if you ask me for any one kind of thing, it is the kind of the reliability of data with real-time data, which with accuracy and speed, accuracy, and the real-time basis kind of the data which immediately is transformed into information on the basis of which we are decision making. So it's making the task of the management quite helpful, because it is quite helpful to the management to make decisions based upon accurate data at the right time, right? So that quick decision making is enabled there, and the organization either makes more profit or the losses are reduced, kind of on those kind of decisions are there. So that's the number one thing. Other things kind of how the functioning and all, we have the data collation time and the KPI and all, and the accuracy were questioned. If per se, if I see 70-80% accuracy of data was well within our this thing, that it's fine enough, we can take a decision based on that. Now that 70-80% is no longer valid, you have to be kind of 90+% data accuracy is there. So that's all the KPIs and all, so that long term, whatever the standards that you have fixed in your budgets or kind of your processes, like in our steel industry, how many hits has to be done per day, what will be the process loss, kind of the data, the mix of the raw material there, and what is the output in terms of that, what are the process losses and all. We are getting real-time data on that basis, and the corrective measures are taken immediately, right? So that anything there in terms of quality is also prevented, that any quality loss is there, and any loss of expenses is there also, that is also prevented. Thank you.
Yeah, Atul?
I would probably summarize that in a sentence. And you heard, my colleague Pradeep saying that these days are ex-P&A days. So all ex-FP&A, team that is expected to deliver. And the three key things to remember is speed, agility, and acceleration. I think that kind of summarizes, the statement that I'm trying to make.
Thank you. I think finance professionals are currently leading the way and setting new standards to keep their organizations on the top. I think that's the way the CFOs are working. In case there is any questions, we can answer it. Otherwise, we can close the session. Are there any questions?
Gentlemen, I mean, before we take on questions and before we thank you, the couple of comments dedicated to all of you. Let's start off with that. We've got Mr. Ravi Kumar who writes in, "Good afternoon, everyone." That's for all of you. We've got Mr. Ankur Saxena who writes in, "Glad to see you, Yash, after a long time." I'm sure that's for Mr. Yash Arora. Mr. Manish Mehta writes in, "Good afternoon to all. Nice to see all the speakers." Mr. Ajay Sharma writes in the same, "Good afternoon. What a pleasure to have the most artistic CFOs out there. Can't wait to vote for you, buy your art and paintings, read your poems very, very soon. An absolute pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so very much. And of course, and as the pratha of Exito is, you clap for yourselves along with us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. It's nice to meet Ashish, Yash, and Amit. We keep on meeting in these kind of virtual meetings nowadays.
Pleasure meeting
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great connecting with all of you.
All the best. Thank you. Stay care. Stay care.
Fantastic.
I think the session had been very enriching. I think I enjoyed a lot. I think everyone should have enjoyed
Sure.
very much.
Then, gentlemen, there is one question. But please, I think let's change pleasantries first. Thank everyone. There is one question. This is from Mr. Shailesh Prajapati, who writes in, so any one of the speakers can please take this. How can we convert KPI to a number to track on QOQ or YOY, quarter on quarter or year on year? So any one speaker, please go ahead.
Ashish, would you like to answer this?
Sorry, what was the question, Nikita?
The question is, it's from Mr. Shailesh, who writes in, how can we convert KPI into a number to track quarter on quarter or year on year?
KPIs are by definition numbers. So you have to make sure that you define what they call SMART KPIs, which are short and measurable, which are objective, so that you're able to track it on a periodic basis, whether it is monthly, quarterly, or yearly. So I think it's also a key job of the CFOs to make sure that the KPIs that are getting measured in the organization directs you to your strategic objective. KPI for the sake of KPI may not lead you anywhere.
Fantastic answer, Mr. Ashish. Of course, as and when we are thanking our amazing audience members, are like, no, let's continue this session further. We've got Mr. Pramod Kumar, who writes in very good session. Mr. Vipin Khanna, who writes in, thank you so much, good session. Mr. Venugopal Krishna has a question. What is your view on AI and robotics in F&A in the future? And what F&A team to be groomed to meet digitalization? Any one of our speakers can take this question.
See, I think the way forward is the RPAs, right? The way I think today in my organizations, most of the processes are on RPA. There are small gaps which we are trying to fix it up. So going forward, I think the way accounting is going to be the blocking, and it's going to be completely in RPS now. The days when we used to finalize the balance sheet, look at the month ends. Now with RPAs, it's there. Every hour we can download the balance sheet, the P&L account. That's the way to look forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much, gentlemen. What a pleasure to have yet again. Thank you. Fantastic session.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.